The Crimes and Misdemeanors of Jefferson Technical College, 1984 through 1988. Now, I worked at this college for 29 years. It had four names: Jefferson Technical Institute, Jefferson Technical College, Jefferson Community College, and then the dreaded Eastern Gateway Community College. And if you've never been to Steubenville, Ohio, you might have heard of it anyways. A popular consumer website listed it as the worst college in the country a few years ago. 715 out of 715. Matter of fact, just recently, the fourth president just got fired. So it's nice to know that some things never change. Now, I worked at this place 29 years, and I can tell you that we had some wonderful employees, that some students, they got out of poverty by getting an education there. I mean, if you throw millions of dollars at something, you're bound to hit something, right? But if you look through the dark lens, in my opinion, it's also a story of corruption, nepotism, sexism, extreme racism, suicide, and even murder. This is my story. I started as it had some horrible title. It was like part-time student worker, financial aid recipient, and some people just called us pond scum. I mean, really, we were so low we weren't even on the organizational chart. It was pretty dreadful. I was sent a paper asking which department would I like to work in, and they gave me like 10 choices. I checked everything but security. So, of course, I got a letter back a week later saying, "Welcome to security." The scams and things started really quick and fast and early. The first thing that happened was a physical assault by another employee. To this day, I have no idea what brought it on or how it happened. I didn't fight back. I got punched several times on my left side of my body. I had bruises up and down my body. I was really sore for a while. And being on security, I filled out an incident report. And I said that this employee had hit me and several times, and I had witnesses, and I can show you the bruises. A member of management tore up the paper. They don't like bad things like that being talked about. And I was told never to mention it again, and I could keep my job. What a wonderful group of people, right? I mean, like, how would you like to call the police and somebody say, "Oh, just play nice"? See, that's the kind of school system I came out of. Whenever you tried to complain that you were being bullied, the teachers would say, "Play nice." Well, I kept my mouth shut, I guess, because I really wanted an education and I wanted the job. I thought this was the best way forward for me. The other employee got full-time. I, however, remained part-time for the entire 29 years, even though along the way I had several managers tell me that eventually I would be full-time. They lied. Matter of fact, all the way up to the third president, I was going to apply for a full-time job, and she told me my job was just as safe as anybody else's. And then a few months later, I got laid off after 29 years and couldn't get my pension. So that tells you the kind of people we were dealing with. Back in 1984, I probably had low self-esteem, so I probably didn't think much about it in a way. Welcome to Jefferson County. And I wish I could go back and whisper in my ear, "Get a lawyer," or just call the police. Honestly, I should have did something. If I had all this to do over again, I don't know that I would do it. So the next thing that came about was the unemployment office scam. I was told that I was going to be taken off as a financial aid student worker and just be a regular student worker. So I had to go down to the unemployment office and fill out some paperwork. Okay, so the next day I went to classes, and before I could get down to the unemployment office, I was called to the main office. And I filled out a lot of paperwork. And I explained I didn't get a chance to go to the unemployment office yet. And they said, "Well, why would you go there? You just filled out all the paperwork." So, okay, I must have misunderstood. Next day, that manager came back and he said, "How come you didn't go to the unemployment office?" I explained I already filled out the paperwork. He said, No, this is how we're going to do it." So I had to go down to the unemployment office, ask for his special lady friend, and she made me fill out some papers and backdated it, and then took credit for setting me up for a job that I already had. Another scam that came about wasn't really a scam, it was the sexual assaults. I was sexually assaulted 4 times, probably 2 times in this time period. Now, I don't want to make it sound overly dramatic. I mean, some people in life has like really horrible incidents. Mine was just rather awkward and embarrassing. 2 of the incidents were by 2 women at 2 separate times. They both kind of caught me off guard. I was sort of sitting up against a table or something, and they grinded their rear ends into my crotch and kind of made a joke out of it in front of a group of people. It was humiliating and embarrassing, but I tried to laugh it off with everybody else in the room. Wasn't that thrilling, and it doesn't give me nightmares or anything, so those 2 I can give a pass on. The third one was by actually a security guard who slapped me in the rear end and kind of cupped me and lifted me a little bit, I guess is the only way I could describe it. That was really humiliating and embarrassing and disgusting. And I didn't say anything. I didn't tell anybody about it because I was just so humiliated by it. This is the only one that I kind of got some justice out of it. This security guard ended up going to prison for 2 accounts of gross sexual imposition, I guess, to his granddaughter. So he did at least have to go to prison. So I guess that's a little bit of justice. The fourth one was by a female employee who I couldn't stand. She came up and grabbed me from behind, caught me off guard, and kind of, I guess, groped me or whatever you want to say. And I yelled at her, "Get off of me." And she said if I told anybody, she would tell on me. And I said, "What would you tell on me for?" And she said, "I'll think of something." I found that one not only rather humiliating, but rather disturbing on so many different levels. Those are the 2 that really bother me, I guess, even sometimes if I think about them. But like I said, they're not anywhere near as bad as what other people had to go through. So I'm not trying to, hook up to their misery or anything. The next scam that came by was in the summer, we would clean out the lockers. But students thought since it was a 2-year college, associate degree, that they had the lockers for 2 years. They didn't. So we'd go to clean out the lockers and you'd find a lot of textbooks in them. And if you know anything about textbooks at a college, they cost anywhere from $50 to $150 a piece, even back in the 1980s. So I would look up the locker number and find out who had it and put their name in the book. I was told that this was taking too long and it was their responsibility. They should have cleaned out their lockers. Just put them in the lost and found, and then they can come in and rummage through the box and find their books. So, okay, that's what I did. And then a few days later, I was stopped by the book buyback guy. These are the people that come to your bookstore from a company and they buy these books back off the students at the end of the quarter or semester, and they give you like $6 for the $100 book. And he asked me, did security have any more books for him? And thinking quickly, I said, I'm not sure. How many books did you get so far? And he said 15. Sure enough, a member of security was selling the textbooks to the book buyback guy. So basically stealing students' books and lining his own pockets with it. Another horrible, horrible thing that the college was doing, there was a member of security who was giving a copy of a printout to the police department that listed all the students' names with all their phone numbers and social security numbers and the classes they were in. If you ever seen an old computer printout paper, it's like accordion style. It folds back and forth, and if you would unroll it, it would, or unwrap it or unfold it, it would go like, hundreds and hundreds of feet. This thing was about 5 inches thick. And if you don't know, you're not allowed to give out information to the police without like a court order. Matter of fact, I saw students arrested right out of the classroom. And you would think that the lawyers would say like, gee, how'd you know where my client was at the time? Another problem was that we used to get these all over the building. There were several departments that got a copy of this. You got one at the beginning of each quarter and then later semesters. And then you got one 2 weeks into it, which was the stabilized roster. This is students who drop in added classes and people who, decided they didn't want it because they didn't like the teacher or whatever. And these papers, I'd find them all over the college. You were supposed to watch this stuff like a hawk. You were supposed to lock them up and keep them secure. And when you were done with them at the end of the semester, you were supposed to take them to this big industrial shredder we had and grind them up. But it would take you like 15 or 20 minutes to grind them up, so some people just threw them into the trash can. So anybody walking by the trash can could have picked one up and had all your social security numbers, or a maintenance person could have stole them, or anybody walking by the maintenance thing as he was cleaning classrooms, he or she, and then they threw it out in the dumpster, where we always had people going through our dumpsters for pop cans and metal and food or whatever they could find in there. So anybody could have stole these, and people would like sit down somewhere in the hallway and forget about them and leave them sitting out, or I would see them up on file cabinets where students were walking in and out of the room. So if you've ever had your identity stolen and you were a student at our college anywhere from the 1980s to clear into the 2000s, there's no reason to think that it wasn't our fault. Or maybe you had a boyfriend or girlfriend who suddenly got your phone number somehow and you always wondered how. Well, it might have been us. Over the years, there was a lot of sexism. It kind of went both ways. It was a very strange thing, and it kind of evolved over the 29 years. Back in this time period, the most noticeable one, and the best example I could give you, the male managers, sometimes sort of as a status symbol, I guess, would send their female secretaries down to fetch them coffee. Now, here's my opinion on this. If you have a private business and you hire a secretary with your own money, then I think that's okay that you have her make coffee as long as you explain this as part of the job up front. But when you're paying these people with taxpayer dollars, there is no reason that this should be part of their job description at all. These people went to school, they're professionals, and if you're too lazy to walk down, the coffee machine was right there in the lounge. All they had to do is walk down the steps, get a cup of coffee, and come back up. And one day I asked one of the female secretaries, doesn't this bother you that he's getting you to fetch his coffee? And she said, no, not at all. She walked downstairs, got the coffee, came up, stopped in front of my office, and spit right into the coffee. And then took a pencil and stirred it in, and then went up and I saw her hand it to him and he started drinking it. Now, I know you're probably saying, gee, probably you should have reported that because that's disgusting. But I was on her side in this, and I just kind of laughed to myself knowingly and thought, I will never ask anybody to get me coffee. Well, I don't even drink coffee, but even if I did, I don't want any part of it. Over the many, many years, verbal abuse was just a regular feature. We had a few employees, and it was always like 4 or 5 employees who really just caused havoc. Over the entire 29 years, if one would quit or retire, it seemed like somehow they always got replaced, like there was a quota of nasty people. One incident I can give you back then, not only was the employees abused, but the students got abused. One student was an African American student, and he changed his name, what he felt was a slave name, and he changed it to a Muslim name. And this so enraged a security member that he would wait until the student was like sitting in the lounge with other students and it was kind of crowded, and he would go to the other end of the room and yell his original name until he would look up, and then when he would look up, he would laugh at him and walk out of the room. That's just like one of 10,000 examples I could give you. But that's the kind of behavior that went on at the college all the time. The second president of the college got himself into a little bit of trouble in this time period. Now, if I understand it right, it was something that I think he took like college money and he spent it on something that you weren't allowed to spend it on, or he diverted it somewhere or did something with it. And I think he actually had to serve community service over it. And I think they expunged his record or whatever. That's what happens. Like if one of the employees would do something like this, probably would have been fired or really reprimanded or yelled at. When the president does it, we just kind of called it an oopsie. Maybe some other oopsie moments over the years was us keeping a cigarette machine in the lounge and selling cigarettes to minors. Some of us begged to put this machine like in the bookstore so that kids wouldn't come in and buy them. The lounge has these back doors where anybody just walking through the parking lot walking around the building, could just run in and buy a pack of cigarettes. And we used to have kid events at the college all the time. Like we'd have hunter safety and be a bunch of 14-year-olds. They'd come out on break and you'd walk through the lounge and there'd be like all these 14-year-olds that you would have to yell at and tell them to get rid of the cigarettes and stop smoking. And it was kind of a nightmare. Also, we tended to sell beer to underage people. We used to have these student senate dances. We'd have live bands and sold beer. And some people got into the dances that might have been a little bit too young. And we did this for quite a while. And then one day the college, I don't know, sobered up, said that you could no longer sell beer at these dances. So we had a couple dances where we didn't sell alcohol and nobody came. The only reason people wanted to come was to get buzzed. Matter of fact, we also had some employees who occasionally would start a beer at the beginning of the shift and nurse it throughout the shift. Nothing like working with buzzed employees. Some more oopsies, I guess. Now, if you think I'm exaggerating any of this stuff, I'm actually downplaying it. But, some proof I could point to is that the teachers in this time period went on strike. They got so fed up that I think we were like the first college, technical college, to go on strike in the state of Ohio. Now, it was actually like a civil war. I mean, really, the staff was inside the building. They didn't really have a dog in this fight. And the teachers were upset because I believe they had many grievances, but I think one of the main ones was like equal pay for equal work. The college maintained that to get the men out of out of engineering field and teach engineering classes, that they had to pay them more money. And the secretaries, like teaching a secretarial class, women, they were a dime a dozen, so they paid them less money. But they said this is equal pay, equal work. They were both teachers. They both had to grade tests. They both had to turn in grades and everything. And I think this thing went on for like 100 days, and it was really nasty. Like I said, it was a civil war. And even afterwards, it took a long time to heal up any bad feelings amongst the people. It was during this time, though, I was working 12-hour shifts 5 days a week, 60 hours a week. But because I was a student employee, they said that I wasn't entitled to protection by the law, meaning I wasn't entitled to time and a half. So they tried to cheat me out of hundreds of dollars. If you don't know about colleges, they have to be audited like every year. They get independent auditors come in. And I think that's who caught them at it and said, well, no, he's still a human being. You have to pay him time and a half. And they had to give me a check for several $100s and make it up. Now, I was only making $3.35 an hour, so they weren't saving that much money. But the ugly truth of this community college anyways is the reason the full-time people had such great health care and little bonus things and tons of food to eat all the time was on the backs of part-time people. But that'll be in another video. They tried to cheat me several times over the years. The security guards had to, for a while anyways, had to overlap their shifts. So my last round would be the next guard's first round. And they didn't pay us for that. So we had to donate a half an hour to the college each time. So they cheated me out of hundreds of dollars there that they technically still owe me, I would say. We had a levy that was up, and I had to go, and they kind of forced me to donate time to get the levy passed. And I think that's illegal, but I did it anyways. I wanted to be a good employee. It kind of goes on, the money they tried to cheat us out of. Like I said at the beginning of this, if I had a chance to do this all over again, I don't know that I would. I might have just ran after I got my first associate degree. I might have ran. To keep my job all these years as a student worker, they forced me to keep taking classes. So I got my associate degree in the first 2 years in business management. The next year, I got an associate degree in retailing. And then they still wouldn't hire me. So I had to still kick back money to the college and just sign up for courses. I think it was on the quarters still, so I had to take 3 classes to keep my job. So I kicked back money to the college, and then they got also money having me as a student. It helped their numbers. Imagine a job that you had to kick back money just to keep. And I was only making $3.35 an hour. So, it wasn't like I was making a fortune here. And after the strike, I could only work up to 30 hours a week. So there you go. I could come up with more crimes and misdemeanors of this college, but I think you get the general idea what these 4 years were like. I think I added to the oral history as much as I'm willing to. The video is getting a little long, but let me tell you, this is 4 of 29 years that I worked at the college. I wish I could tell you things got better, but you haven't heard anything yet. You see, we spent all of your money, we laughed while we did it, and you did nothing to stop us. For now, it's me, Camroy, here on YouTube.